Today I'm making buttermilk fresh milled flour rolls. Welcome to White Shadow Fare. Make it homemade and make it with love. I always start by milling my flour. I'm going to mill 590 grams of hard white wheat berries. To start, in a small bowl, I'm adding 1/2 of a cup of warm milk and 1 tablespoon of honey. I'm going to give that a stir to try to melt the honey into the milk. Now, I normally bloom my yeast in a water mixture, but this time, because I want these rolls to be nice and soft, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of yeast, and I'm going to let this bloom in the milk. It might be a little harder to see. It's going to take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to get nice and frothy. And when that time is up, it should look a little bit like this. It's a little harder to see than when you bloom in water, but it still looks puffier than it did before, so I know that my yeast is active, and I'm going to pour that right into my mixer. Now these are the rolls that I make for every occasion. They are always asked for. I'm going to start with 1/2 cup of very, very soft butter and 1/4 cup of honey. And the honey adds just the right amount of sweetness to these rolls. We need 3 eggs that are at room temperature, and you'll add these to the wet ingredients. 3 tablespoons of Vital Wheat Gluten. Now that of course is optional. If you aren't going to use the Vital Wheat Gluten, just add that much more flour to the mix. 1 cup of buttermilk, and if you don't have buttermilk, you can use a mix of milk and a little bit of plain yogurt, or milk and a tablespoon of vinegar added to it, and let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Buttermilk adds a tender crumb. Any breads that are made with buttermilk tend to be more soft. Before I get anything else started, I'm going to blend my wet mixture, and this is just going to break the eggs up so I don't have to worry about any of that later on into the mix. If you don't enjoy the taste of buttermilk, don't worry, you can't taste it. If there's a holiday coming up, these are the rolls that I'm making. If we're having something special for dinner, these are the rolls. Add most of my 590 grams. I'm going to keep about 1/2 cup of that flour out to add later on. I want to keep the dough a little bit on the wet side because I'm going to add my salt in once I've gotten most of the flour mixed in. And so you can see that it is starting to pull a little bit away from the sides, but it isn't quite there yet. We're looking for it to clear the sides of the mixer and form almost like a ball that is going around. But if you do this slowly, it's giving it time to hydrate and get completely mixed in before you add the next scoop of flour. Now, I don't do an autolyse or a tangzong or anything with this recipe. I've been making it for years this way, and it's always come out fantastic. But that's certainly something that you could add if you want it to be even softer. So now that I have most of my flour added, I'm going to add 1½ teaspoons of salt, and I'm using Redmond's real salt. Any salt will do. Sometimes I use kosher salt. And because my dough is fairly wet, it mixes in super easy. And now I'm going to slowly add the remainder of that flour. This is the perfect time to start looking for the dough, and you can see here it's pulling off the sides, but it's still sticking down at the bottom, so we're not there yet. But don't worry, we have that 1/2 cup of flour that we have pulled out, and we're just slowly adding that in. And I love watching my mixer mix the dough together, but I also mix these sometimes by hand, which you can certainly knead these by hand. You need to knead for 8 to 10 minutes in your mixer, and I would guess about 20 minutes if you are kneading by hand. I love these rolls for a quick afternoon lunch. They make the perfect sandwich, or sometimes in the morning when I'm running a little bit late, I can just grab a roll. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a like. Drop a comment below. Let me know something that you'd like to see me make. If you have a great fresh milled flour recipe that you would like to share, I would love to hear it. And as I'm watching this go around, I can see that it is clearly picking up everything off of the bottom and off of the sides. And now at the end of my 8 to 10 minutes, I can see that I've got a cohesive ball. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't want a big hard lump, but it has kind of pulled together a little bit more than it was at the beginning. And so giving it that time to knead is really important. Don't think that you need to add more flour. So at this point in time, you should be able to touch your dough and it should feel tacky, but it shouldn't be sticking all over your fingers. If it is sticking all over your fingers, you are going to need to add more flour. I never have to add any more flour. It works out perfectly for me every time. I'm going to kind of pull it into a little bit of a ball, making sure that any of the dry flour that is in there has been picked up in case some of it hadn't been incorporated. I like to bake these using all hard white wheat, but sometimes I do a 50-50 blend of hard white wheat and red wheat. Either way, I'm getting so much nutrition, those 40 out of 44 nutrients that fresh milled flour gives us. And then I'm going to cover it and let it sit there anywhere from about a half an hour to an hour. And as you can see here, my dough is filled with lots of air. So if this was the winter time and it's cold in my house, I'm going to have to wait that full hour. If this is the summertime, I'm going to be closer to that half hour for my rising time. I decided to make this into 20 pieces, but certainly 24 pieces, and I usually put this in a 13 by 9 pan. Now, as always, I want all of my rolls to be equal, so I measure them out. Certainly, you can just eyeball it, and that is fine too. This way, in my opinion, nobody's going to argue because everybody's roll is the exact same size. So these are the rolls that I make at the holidays, whether that is at Easter time, whether that's at Thanksgiving, for special dinners, for that Sunday meal when you're having a nice roast beef dinner. That's when I make these, but I also keep them frozen at all times in my freezer, and I can grab one. Like we're having soup tonight, and this will go perfectly along with the soup. So you can see how I normally make them in my 13 by 9. I normally make them as just round rolls. But today I decided to do knots because I'm going to be making some other rolls, and those are going to be round, and I wanted to see the difference between the two. Now, as you're rolling out the rope to make your knots, if this is too sticky, you might need a little bit of flour just to kind of dust the outside of that rope before you go ahead and pull your knot. And that helps it so that you can pull it through without it sticking to each other. I didn't do that, and it probably would have looked neater had I done that, but they were fine. I just wanted them to look a little bit different than the other rolls that I'm making. So I roll out just a nice long rope, tie it in a knot around my fingers, and then put it on a lined baking sheet. So I'm using a rimmed baking sheet this time because I'm making knots instead of round rolls. As always, when you bake something, you want to make sure that it is the correct temperature before you pull it out of the oven. So I always use a thermometer at the end of my bake time and make sure that it reaches at least 200 degrees. Now, I do like my rolls a little bit darker than most people. I don't like them as soft. I like them to have a little bit more heft so I can make a sandwich or something on them. So after 40 minutes of my rolls being covered up, they are ready to bake. So they're going to go into an oven that has been preheated to 350 degrees, and they're going to be in there for about 20 minutes. And you can see that I like them a little bit on the darker side. And since I'm the one that's eating them, that's how I made them. Everybody loves a fresh roll. When they walk past, they can't help but grab one, butter it up, and enjoy it. Any meal feels special when you have a roll beside it. For some reason, it's just more impressive than a piece of bread. They're soft, they're delicious, and they are totally worth making. If you are looking for a special fresh milled flour roll, this is it. Fantastic crumb. You will not regret making this one. We're supposed to be eating this fresh milled flour all day, every day, and rolls are a great way of getting in more fiber. I hope you will give this one a try. Thank you so much for joining me at White Shadow Fare.